behind you! That's better. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Spin Reviews, and today I'm going to be talking about the new album from Neck Deep called Life's Not Out to Get You. You know, it's been a pretty interesting week following my B.O.B. review. This has definitely been like the week of follow-up from 2014 for me. I talked about this band's debut album, Wishful Thinking, this pop-punk band from the UK, and I was generally mixed on it. While there were some great songs on it, like Losing Teeth and Growing Pains and a few others, to me about half of it just felt like a compilation of everything that's wrong with modern pop-punk, issues that I'll get into later on in this video. So I was definitely interested when I heard that they were already following that up, with the promise from what I saw in one quote that this would be less rushed than Wishful Thinking was. So after finally catching up on their EPs a few weeks ago, I figured I would check this out like as soon as I could. There are a couple things that really help separate this from Wishful Thinking instead of just being kind of a rehash of that formula, but I think one of those is that there seems to have been a lot more focus put into the songwriting, both musically and lyrically. Only a couple tracks here really feel like pop-punk background noise, and there's just a lot more like guitar interplay, interesting bass lines on songs like, say, Serpent, and on songs like, say, Citizens of Earth and Can't Kick Up the Roots and Kali Ma. We get a lot more catchy, infectious riffs that you would expect out of like a more quote-unquote classic pop-punk. And I think part of that has to do with the production, which is fantastic across the board on this thing. On the harder-hitting tracks, the drums and guitars just pop in a really great way. It really reminds me of fellow Hopeless band's Bayside's last album, which was one of my favorite albums of 2014, so naturally I found myself really gravitating to the sound of this one. Not only that, but I think that Ben Barlow, the frontman of this band, has actually really improved as a vocalist in one really subtle area that I don't think everyone will detect, but once you hear it, you kind of can't unhear it. I feel like on their earlier stuff, even though they're from the UK, he was kind of putting on an American accent in a lot of their stuff, which would make sense given that a lot of their influences, like Blink-182 and Green Day and all that, are from here in America, naturally. Here, I feel like his vocals are a lot more natural. In the case of the opener, Citizens of Earth, the more hardcore influenced vocals from him sound really great. Going back to Serpent, this is one of my favorite songs on this thing, just because it's got some really nice experimentation going on with it. There's a lot more dynamics in the instrumentation and all that, and while the lyrics are a bit melodramatic when you look into them, it's still pretty cool imagery, and it goes along with the tone of the song really well. And despite my undying, irrational hatred for the four chords of pop, December is a pretty well done acoustic ballad, way better than A Part of Me, which in my opinion is a bit overrated. And now a lot of this record seems to deal with the end of a relationship, which is not exactly untapped in this genre, but I think it's done really well here. It shows a lot of maturity, basically putting himself in the blame, and I think he just comes off really likable in songs like this. But now I have to talk about not only my favorite song on this album, but probably my favorite Neck Deep song to date, Gold Steps. This is just catchy in all areas, but at the same time sort of keeps that wordy, confessional approach that is one of modern pop-punk's best defining traits. And the message could have been handled terribly in the wrong hands, and frankly, it has been handled terribly in the wrong hands, basically talking about getting through hard times and all that. But what I think really makes the song in particular work, it makes it one of my favorite songs in this vein in a really long time, is just how brutally honest it is. Like, it's basically about acknowledging that, yes, the situation I'm in sucks, but at the same time you also got to not dwell in sadness about it, and you got to move on from that. Again, it's a surprisingly nuanced message for a band in this kind of scene, I guess. And even though I don't really want to bring like personal relatability stuff into this, I gotta be honest, I've been going through some stuff lately, and this song has really been helping me out. It's been encouraging me. And the reason why I bring this up is that, like, sure, any reviewer could just come up and say, hey, this song has this message, maybe it'll work for you. But this song really has been a positive thing for me over the last few weeks, and I think that's one of the best testimonies I can give, really. Also worth mentioning is that while the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom reference in the song Kali Ma is a bit silly, obviously, to me it still kind of works as a metaphor for the inevitable end of a relationship way better than you might think it would. But my gushing aside, this album is not without moments where it stumbles a bit. Particularly on the song I Hope This Comes Back to Haunt You, which despite being pretty good musically, to me kind of reverses all of the good traits of a song like December into something a lot more uncomfortably bitter and catty, and I don't know, that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And on just plain underwhelming songs like Threat Level Midnight and Smooth Seas Don't Make Good Sailors, it basically sounds like Ben spent an hour writing vaguely about self-pity with these undefined rhyming schemes, went into the studio, the band had like a stock pop-punk instrumental ready, and he just kind of freestyled where the words would fit within the song, barely making any cohesive or memorable melodies. Now, I already talked about my problems with this kind of approach in the Wishful Thinking review, but I came up with another way to explain this through an analogy that I feel like more of this demographic would relate to. Pizza. This slice of pizza basically represents a pop-punk song. You've got the punk foundation with the crust and the sauce and, you know, stuff that's generally better for you. You have the hooks and the engaging melodies and sing-along, you know, bridges and stuff like that, represented by the cheese and the pepperoni, which is where a lot of the taste comes from. Now, a lot of this modern stuff is basically what would happen if you take these great sugary elements, the pop in your pop-punk, and just ripped it off and tossed it on the floor. Now, in a version of punk that's a bit less poppy, you could get away with not having the cheese or pepperoni. Maybe put some healthier stuff on there, you know, some higher concepts and stuff like that, some more experimentation. But without those hooks and without any experimentation to add on to that, you're just left with really wimpy, unmemorable punk rock. And what you're left with is just bread and sauce in crust. But in all seriousness, I gotta say one more thing, and just because I want to end this review on a high note, I really like the message in the lead single from this thing, Can't Kick Up the Roots, which is basically about making the most of a bad situation, not growing up in a good town, for example, and just owning that and making the best of it. And to me, it sort of subverts that old pop-punk cliche of hating your hometown and all of that, you know, basically whatever you saw in the Jared Alonji videos. So yeah, I am pretty satisfied overall with this second Neck Deep album, Life's Not Out to Get You. It's a definite improvement, and I can see these guys really making a fantastic album in the future as they develop their craft a bit more, so I'm going to give this a solid 7.5. So if you guys have heard this album, what do you think about it? Do you agree with what I had to say? Do you disagree? Have any feedback about the channel in general? Let me know in the comments down below. Share this around with anyone who might be interested. Like the Facebook page in the description for updates, and hopefully I'll see you in the next episode of Spin It Reviews. What a waste of a perfectly good slice of pizza. Well, whatever. I'm diabetic. It was probably better off.